When Sabrina first brought up the idea of opening our marriage, she made it sound like a mature decision, like something two modern, evolved adults should be able to handle if we truly trusted each other. We were sitting on the patio of our duplex, drinking wine after a long workday. I remember the clink of her glass on the table and the way she smiled, not nervously, but with that deliberate confidence she used when she wanted to sell me something. That smile used to work on clients. It had worked on me, too, for years. She said it like a challenge. What if we stopped pretending we're enough for each other and just accepted the truth? We've both changed. We both want different things. Why not give each other space, without the lies? I didn't answer right away. I stared out at the quiet street, the warm orange wash of sunset over the neighbor's roof. We built a pretty good life together, co-owned a boutique design agency, had 3 employees, decent income, a routine that worked. We hadn't been wildly in love in years, but we weren't enemies either. I'm not asking to separate, she added, seeing my hesitation. Just freedom. I don't want to sneak around. I want us to be honest. Freedom. That was the word she clung to. I should have seen it for what it was, an exit with the door left ajar, so she could return if things didn't work out elsewhere. But I didn't argue. Not really. Maybe because deep down, I already knew we were over. Not in a bitter way. Just worn thin. All right, I said finally. Let's try it. Sabrina blinked, surprised, almost disappointed that I didn't fight her harder. I think part of her wanted drama, maybe even a breakup, just so she could feel like the tragic one. But instead, I gave her calm, and she didn't know what to do with that. The following weeks were quiet, too quiet. She started going out more, staying late at industry mixers and networking events. I didn't ask questions. I didn't need to. I saw the glow on her face when she came back, the guilt covered with exaggerated politeness. Want me to warm something up for you? She'd ask with fake sweetness, as if offering leftovers could distract from the perfume she hadn't worn in months. I didn't tell her I already knew that one of our junior designers, Jess, had mentioned seeing her with a man at a rooftop party, that I'd seen messages pop up on the shared iPad she forgot to log out of. His name was Owen. Younger, smug, the kind of guy who wore tailored jeans and acted like he invented sarcasm. He wasn't the problem, though. Sabrina was the one who crossed the line. But I didn't fight her. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just adjusted. Emotionally, I stepped out of the marriage that night on the patio. From then on, I treated her like a roommate. Polite, cordial, business partner level cold. We kept the agency running, we paid the bills, we even hosted one last dinner party together. On the surface, everything looked normal. But under the surface, I began preparing. I met Emily at a local bookstore. She was standing in the history section, flipping through a hardcover about post-war Berlin. She asked me if I'd read it. I hadn't. We ended up talking for an hour. No flirting, no pretense. Just connection. It had been so long since someone actually listened when I spoke. She didn't know me as Sabrina's husband. She didn't even know I was married. And I didn't lie. I told her the truth, that I was living in a dead marriage, navigating the mess of something that used to be love. We started seeing each other, slowly, carefully. No overnight bags, no flashy dates. Just coffee, books, conversation. It wasn't about escape. It was about remembering who I used to be before I became the guy who walked on eggshells in his own house. Sabrina noticed. Of course she did. At first, she tried to ignore it. Then came the snide comments. Late again. You've been really into reading lately, huh? Should I be jealous of Barnes and Noble? I didn't bite. I smiled. I nodded. I let her stew. Then she snapped. It happened during a Monday morning client call. We were in the home office, on Zoom with a tech startup from Seattle. I made a suggestion about streamlining their campaign schedule, something we'd talked about beforehand, and Sabrina cut me off, live, with a laugh. Oh, Jason, please. You barely even show up to meetings these days. Maybe let the professionals handle it. The clients chuckled awkwardly. I smiled. After the call, she didn't apologize. She didn't even look at me, just packed up her laptop and left the room. That night, she confronted me. Not about cheating, about embarrassing her. About disrespecting the partnership. I realized then, she didn't want freedom. She wanted control. She wanted to win. And now she thought she was losing. That's when things turned. She started digging. She went through our company finances, tried to find discrepancies, began casually asking our accountant if Jason had made any unauthorized payments. She talked to clients behind my back. She even tried to get our lead designer to admit I was being distracted. But I was 10 steps ahead. I'd already transferred ownership of my shares into a private trust. I'd already secured separate accounts. I'd already made copies of every contract, every invoice, every message that proved her own misuse of company funds, like the time she flew Owen to Miami on a branding retreat. I didn't say a word. I didn't warn her, because she'd already chosen the rules. I was just playing the game better. By the time Sabrina realized I wasn't playing along anymore, it was too late. She used to run the emotional thermostat in our house. If she was warm, we had peace. If she was cold, everyone froze. For years, I adjusted, changed my tone, my schedule, even my wardrobe, just to avoid another one of her tirades masked as honest feedback. But now I was quiet, still, untouchable, and that, more than anything, unbalanced her. She didn't understand how I could say sure, go out, and actually mean it. How I could hear her take a call from Owen on speaker and not flinch. How I could come home late, hang up my coat, and greet her with a neutral evening, like she was a guest. This wasn't the open marriage she imagined. In her head, she'd still be the star of the show, juggling admiration from new men while keeping me on the hook for emotional and financial support. I was supposed to be jealous, desperate, grateful for her return. Instead, I was a ghost in our shared home. A well-dressed, well-fed ghost with his own plans. That terrified her. The first serious crack came when she saw Emily. It was unintentional. Emily and I were having lunch at a quiet French cafe near the design district. It was the kind of place Sabrina wouldn't be caught dead in. Too subtle, too calm, not trendy enough for her social media stories. But fate had other plans. I saw her before she saw us. She was walking with a client, laughing, sunglasses pushed up on her head like a crown. She froze mid-step when she spotted me, and Emily, who was leaning in slightly, pointing to something in a book we'd brought with us. There was nothing romantic in that moment. No kiss, no touch. But Sabrina saw intimacy, the kind she no longer inspired. That night, she made no effort to hide her bitterness. So, Jason's found himself a hobby, she said casually, pouring wine as I read through supplier invoices at the kitchen counter. I didn't even look up. She's a friend. She hummed. You always did have a thing for plain girls with soft voices. Makes you feel what? Safe. Still not looking up. No, just sane. Her smile twitched. Careful, Jason. You're not built for casual. You're going to catch feelings and get sloppy. Thanks for the warning. She stormed out 5 minutes later. The next week, I noticed the first signs of sabotage. A vendor emailed to ask why our retainer hadn't been paid, a payment I'd personally approved. Turns out Sabrina had accidentally redirected funds to another campaign. Our project manager flagged a miscommunication with a client timeline, something Sabrina had quietly changed after I signed off. Then came the social tactics. She invited Owen to an office brainstorming session, claimed it was for outsider perspective. She tried to position him as a consultant, someone we might bring on for digital expansion. He showed up in a blazer 2 sizes too tight, shook hands like he was entering politics, and made 3 vague suggestions that sounded like recycled blog posts from 2014. I let him speak, took notes, nodded, all while privately drafting an email to legal, documenting the encounter. Because by then, I had a full archive. Screenshots, spreadsheets, backup files, internal chats. I wasn't gathering dirt out of revenge. I was gathering it because I'd seen what Sabrina did to former friends, ex-boyfriends, even her own sister when they stopped being useful. She didn't argue, she erased. And I wasn't about to let her paint me as the unfaithful, unstable partner who cracked under the pressure of an honest, adult arrangement. The final trigger came in the form of a staged fight. We were at a private networking dinner, hosted by one of our oldest clients. Sabrina wore that dark green dress she saved for power moves, the one with the plunging neckline and the smug grin to match. Halfway through the evening, while chatting with the CEO of a startup we'd been courting for months, she dropped the bomb. I just worry about Jason sometimes, she said, swirling her wine. He's been so emotional lately. You know how some people just can't handle big transitions. It was subtle, polished, but effective. She cast me as unstable, too fragile for the business world. I smiled. Sabrina's been under a lot of stress. Sometimes she projects. The CEO raised an eyebrow. The seed of doubt had been planted in both directions. Back home, I didn't wait for her to gloat. I saw what you did, I said calmly. She didn't deny it. Oh, come on. It's not personal. It's positioning. Exactly, I replied. And now I'll position myself, too. Her smile faltered. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm done pretending. Next week, I'll be separating my roles. Legal's already notified. My name's off the creative side. The board knows. And from now on, all financial oversight is handled by Marcus. She laughed. You're joking. I wasn't. That night, I moved into the guest room. 2 days later, I transferred my share of active projects to a holding company. And within a week, I had full digital logs of every misstep she'd made in the past 6 months, most of them easily traceable to misuse of company assets for Owen's benefit. She'd been reckless, sloppy, too confident in her charm, too used to manipulating people into silence. And now, she was about to find out what happened when the quiet one stopped playing nice. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to walk through the front door of her empire and lock it from the inside. By the 3rd week after I formally separated our business roles, Sabrina was unraveling, though she tried her best to hide it behind lipstick and stiff smiles. She started wearing heels again in the home office, like height gave her power. She filled her calendar with back-to-back Zoom calls, even the fake ones she didn't need, just to seem in control. And she posted motivational quotes daily on our agency's Instagram, as if pretending to thrive could make it true. I knew the signs. I'd seen them before. That was her pattern, escalate noise when losing ground. But I didn't make noise. I built evidence. See, when someone like Sabrina turns on you, they don't do it cleanly. They scatter breadcrumbs, little things that don't matter on their own, but, when collected, paint a picture of motive, intent, and abuse of power. And I had more than enough now. Owen, for example, wasn't just some secret affair. He'd been on payroll. That came out during a routine audit I initiated through a third-party firm. Sabrina didn't even notice at first. She signed the expense reports without reading. Buried in the consultant fees was a monthly retainer to O&M for strategy sessions he never delivered. His listed business address? A P.O. box that matched a gym downtown, one we used to go to together. I smiled when I saw it. Sabrina always underestimated details. I waited a full month before showing her what I had. It was a Thursday morning. She came into the office with coffee she didn't offer to share, flopped into her chair, and sighed like she carried the weight of the world. We need to talk, she said. I was already ahead of her. Great. I've got something to show you first. I turned my screen toward her and clicked open a PDF. It was titled, Conflict of Interest and Unauthorized Expenses, Draft Summary. She read the first page. Her jaw tensed. Where did you get this? I ordered the audit last quarter, I said flatly. Standard procedure when there are concerns about misappropriation. You signed the engagement letter, remember? You sneaky bastard, she muttered. Careful, I said. We're still in the office. She stood. You don't get to do this. You don't get to undermine me in my own company. It's not your company, I replied. It was ours. And now it's being split. You brought Owen into this space, into client pitches, onto the payroll. You crossed the line. She scoffed. So you're what? The moral compass now? After you started dating some bookstore waif in your little midlife crisis. I didn't react. She was trying to pull me into a shouting match. That's where she thrived. Heat, drama, tears. But I wasn't giving her that. Not anymore. You can yell, I said quietly, or we can talk. Your choice. But if you keep going down this road, the only clients you'll have left will be the ones who enjoy lawsuits. That made her pause. Sabrina wasn't stupid. Arrogant, yes. Short-sighted, definitely. But she wasn't dumb. She knew when she'd overplayed her hand. So she Saturday, what do you want? I want out. With my share, clean. I want the business divided fairly. No drama, no public spectacle. Just a clean break. She studied me. And if I say no? I shrugged. Then you're going to get a very polite email from my attorney. And after that, your inbox will fill up with inquiries about the kind of operation you're running here. From the IRS. From our partners. From people who don't like being lied to. For the first time in months, she looked afraid. But fear turned fast to anger. You'll destroy everything we built. No, I said. You did that. I'm just documenting it. She left the office without another word. That weekend, she tried to retaliate. I came home from a walk to find Emily standing at the door, holding a yellow envelope. Inside were photos, grainy, badly lit shots of me and Emily at a coffee shop, in a parking lot, outside a bookstore. On the back of one was scribbled in thick black marker, "Ask him how honest he really is." Emily was confused, but calm. "This from your wife?" I nodded. "Soon-to-be ex. She's not handling this well, is she?" "No," I said. "And she's about to handle it even worse." Because what Sabrina didn't know was that the agency wasn't the only asset in play. Years ago, my uncle left me a small but valuable property portfolio for rental homes in a gentrifying part of town. I never told Sabrina. I kept them in a separate trust, managed quietly through a firm she'd never heard of. I didn't hide it maliciously. I just knew her tendency to treat assets as stepping stones. I wanted something she couldn't reach. Now, I planned to liquidate part of that portfolio, not just to fund the legal split, but to start something new, something entirely mine. Sabrina made one last desperate move. She filed a motion claiming I was mentally unstable, said I'd been erratic, made irrational business decisions, and should be deemed unfit to represent the company. Her lawyer didn't know I had copies of every decision she made over the last 2 quarters, including her signature on Owen's paychecks, her personal use of corporate cards, and emails full of half-truths to board members. When we showed up in court, my attorney handed over a 200-page binder labeled Unilateral Decisions, Executive Misconduct. The judge looked at Sabrina's lawyer. "You want to proceed with the motion?" He shook his head. Afterward, Sabrina cornered me in the parking lot. Her mascara was perfect, but her eyes were panicked. "You really want to ruin me?" she whispered. "No," I said. "You did that yourself. I'm just making sure you don't ruin anyone else on the way down." As I walked away, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. I was halfway done. The next phase? Letting Owen's family know exactly who their golden boy had been working with behind closed doors, and who paid for that Miami trip their son bragged about on Facebook. I never hated Owen. You can't really hate a weasel for being a weasel. They sniff around, take what they can get, and slink back into the shadows once the lights come on. What I did feel was something closer to professional curiosity. How had someone so dull, so transparently shallow, managed to insert himself into my life, my company, and my marriage without ever raising a red flag until it was too late? Simple. He didn't come in with fire. He came in as vapor. Sabrina made space for him, and he filled it. She gave him access. I gave him a target. So now, I was going to take back the narrative. Quietly. Strategically. First stop, his family. I knew from some early sleuthing that Owen was trying to break into his father's investment firm. Old money, conservative values, big on reputation. His father, Gerald Masters, had a face like a disappointed priest and a handshake that felt like a signed contract. I'd only met him twice at networking events, but that was enough. So I invited him to coffee. Just the 2 of us. Said I was doing some restructuring and needed a second opinion on a potential junior hire who'd recently approached my team. Gerald, curious and mildly flattered, agreed. We met in a quiet downtown cafe, dark wood tables, no music, the kind of place where reputations go to whisper. "I'll be honest with you, Gerald," I began, sliding a manila folder across the table. "I think you'll want to see this before bringing Owen deeper into your firm." He raised a brow, but opened the folder. Inside, a summary of payments from our agency to Owen, labeled consulting fees, with 0 deliverables attached. Below that, excerpts from internal emails between Sabrina and Owen, flirtatious, unethical, and in some places, explicitly discussing how to reallocate funds without board approval. Gerald didn't flinch. Not at first. He read in silence, lips thinning. Then he set the folder down and met my eyes. "You're giving me this why?" "Because he's your son, and you deserve to know who he's been aligning himself with. And because I suspect, when the fallout comes, you'd rather be prepared than blindsided." "You're not suing him?" "Not unless I have to." He nodded slowly. "Thank you for this." We shook hands. Firm. Final. By the time I got home that night, Owen's LinkedIn profile had been updated. His job title at the firm? Removed. That was phase 1. Phase 2 was letting the rest of our partners know who they'd been entertaining in their boardrooms. A clean, fact-based memo, sent from my lawyer, not me, detailed Owen's involvement, the financial implications, and the ethical violations committed under Sabrina's leadership. No accusations. Just documentation. The effect was immediate. 3 major clients scheduled review meetings. 2 quietly paused campaigns. 1 withdrew entirely. Sabrina tried to downplay it, claimed the economy was shifting, blamed outside interference. But in private, she was spiraling. She sent me a 2 a.m. email titled, "We need to talk." I didn't reply. Then came the guilt messages, the manipulations. "Remember what we built. You're not perfect either. Can't we just go back?" No, we couldn't. You don't get to light a house on fire and ask to share the ashes. And besides, I was already building something new. With the funds from the property portfolio, I'd secured a small co-working space in the arts district. Emily helped design the interior, soft lighting, exposed brick, none of the sterile glass and metal vibe Sabrina loved. I hired 3 people I trusted, 1 from the agency, 2 from old contacts, and we started something fresh, a boutique strategy studio. No fluff, just good work. And the best part? Clients followed me, not because I begged or burned bridges, but because reputation travels. People remember who listened, who delivered, who didn't make every project about their ego. Meanwhile, Sabrina scrambled to rebrand. She launched a vision campaign, tried to host influencer mixers, posted photos of herself with vague captions like, "The comeback starts here." But the calls stopped coming. The inbox dried up. Even Owen ghosted her, not that she'd admit it. I heard from a mutual friend that she tried to pitch a new agency model at a funding event. One of the panelists laughed halfway through. The rest just watched her unravel, all sequins and desperation. That night, I got one last message from her. A voice note. "You think you're better than me," she said, her voice tight with fury. "But you're not. You're just a man who got lucky. If I hadn't carried you those first 2 years, you'd still be making logos for coffee shops." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say, because the truth was simple. She thought choosing Owen over me was a power move. But I wasn't the one who needed carrying. I was the one holding the blueprint. And now she was trying to build without it. By the time summer rolled around, Sabrina wasn't just losing clients. She was losing allies. Our mutual contacts stopped answering her calls. Invitations dried up. Her name was no longer whispered in investor circles. Even her carefully curated social media began to lose steam. Fewer likes, less engagement. Her audience could smell it. Failure has a scent, and she was wearing it like perfume. But it wasn't over. Not yet. Because she still thought she could spin her way out. That with enough charm, enough posturing, she could reverse the damage and somehow make me look like the villain. She forgot who I was. I had built our company's foundation, not just with ideas, but with relationships. With the tedious, unsexy parts of business she always dismissed as beneath her. Contracts, compliance, vendor negotiations, employee welfare. Real things that matter when the lights go out and the champagne dries up. So I decided it was time for one final blow. Not out of pettiness, but out of principle. She needed to understand that actions have weight. You don't betray trust, siphon money, humiliate your partner in public and private, and walk away untouched. No, you earn your consequences. It began with a subpoena. My lawyer filed a claim citing financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, including fraudulent payments, falsified expense reports, and unauthorized partnerships. All backed by the audit she never thought I'd commission. It wasn't just a civil move, it bordered on criminal. And that made people nervous. Vendors she owed started demanding payment up front. Her landlord, who had quietly contacted me months ago, increased rent by 20% when her lease came up. Even the co-working spaces she tried relocating to denied her applications once they saw the pending court documents. Then came the interviews. She went on a small podcast hosted by an influencer we both used to know. I watched it, out of morbid curiosity. The host tried to tee her up with sympathy. "You've been through a lot this year," he said. "Do you want to talk about it?" She smiled with that tight, rehearsed expression and said, "People change. Some people can't handle a woman evolving." That was her line now. That I couldn't handle her growth. That I sabotaged her because I was threatened by her success. What she didn't expect was what came next. A few hours after the episode aired, someone, not me, sent the podcast host a Dropbox link. Inside, receipts, invoices, screenshots, bank records. Enough to paint a clear picture that her growth included funneling company funds to a man she was secretly sleeping with while planning to cut her co-founder out completely. The host pulled the episode. then posted an apology, distancing himself from her entirely. The dominoes fell fast after that. 2 agencies she tried partnering with blocked her emails. An online magazine that once profiled her removed the article. Her name on Google slowly morphed from bold founder to controversial figure. And the best part? She couldn't blame me. Not directly. I hadn't posted anything, hadn't commented, hadn't engaged. The truth did all the work for me. Meanwhile, Owen was facing his own reckoning. His father's firm not only terminated his candidacy, but quietly ensured his name wouldn't pass basic background checks at any partner institution for the next 5 years. Every attempt he made to launch a personal brand fell flat. Videos with less than 100 views, a ghost-written Medium blog that never made it past the algorithm. They were both trapped, not by me, but by the reality they created. One afternoon, as I was closing up at the new studio, I received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. I knew her handwriting the moment I saw it. Inside was a single page. You win. I'm leaving the city. I hope it was worth it. No apology. No ownership. Just resignation. And that told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't learned. Not really. She still saw this as a game. Still thought of it in terms of winners and losers. But I hadn't played to win. I played to survive. To reclaim the space I had given away for far too long. Emotionally, professionally, mentally. She was the one who treated love like leverage. Business like theater. People like props. And props break. Theater collapses. Weeks passed. Life settled. Emily and I didn't rush anything. She knew the whole story by then. The betrayal, the court battle, the long shadow that Sabrina had cast over my life. And she never pushed, never pressured me to move on. Instead, she offered something rarer, understanding without agenda. One evening, as we sat in my apartment, which now felt like a home again, she asked, "Do you feel like you got revenge?" I thought about it. The question had weight. No, I said. I didn't get revenge. I got clarity. She nodded, as if that made more sense than any dramatic monologue ever could. Because in the end, this wasn't about vengeance. It was about exposure. Letting people show you who they are, and believing them the first time. Sabrina had shown me years ago, in tiny ways. The lies, the excuses, the moments she made herself the victim to avoid accountability. I just hadn't wanted to see it. But now I did. Clear as glass. And with clarity comes peace. The business? It was growing. The new team? Tight, loyal, efficient. And me? I was done looking back. Because when people burn themselves down, all you have to do is stand far enough away not to catch the smoke. I always knew Sabrina wasn't done. People like her don't exit gracefully. They don't lose in silence. They scratch, they scramble, they scheme. And after everything, the subpoenas, the broken alliances, the reputational collapse, she still thought she had one more card to play. And to be honest, I was counting on it. I didn't spend all those months building my new company, clearing my name, and dismantling her illusions just to leave the board half cleared. If there was one thing left to be done, it was to close the loop, legally, publicly, and with finality. She made her move on a Thursday. I got a call from an associate at the city licensing office. Apparently, Sabrina had filed a complaint against my new business, citing intellectual property theft, misuse of joint business assets, and even an ethics violation involving Emily. It was a desperate play, and it reeked. The timing was precise, just 2 weeks before we were set to close a deal with a major client. If the complaint had gained any traction, even a whisper of doubt could have derailed everything. That was the goal. Not to win, but to taint. But what she didn't know was that I had anticipated this from the start. 6 months prior, I'd hired a private compliance team to audit my own operation. Every contract, every software license, every branding element. All clean, all distinct, all documented. I even had notarized statements from the developer who built our old agency's proprietary tools, confirming I had never copied or reused anything. So when the complaint hit my desk, my lawyer smiled. She's walking into a buzzsaw. And walk she did. The city called her in for a follow-up interview. That's when it got interesting. You see, in her rush to damage me, she included forged emails, screenshots doctored to show conversations that never happened. One of them included a fake message from Emily. But she used the wrong timestamp. A date and time that Emily could prove she'd been out of state, at a wedding, with dozens of photos and witness accounts. That's not just unethical. It's criminal. And when the licensing office discovered the inconsistencies, they didn't just toss her complaint, they flagged it, passed it along to their legal department, which passed it to the DA. Sabrina was under investigation for fraud, for defamation, for filing a false report. And when her lawyer, the same one who tried to bully me during our split, reached out to negotiate a quiet settlement, my answer was simple. No deal. Let it play out. I wasn't being cruel. I was being consistent. She had tried to destroy my reputation, my livelihood, my peace, all while playing victim to the people around her. It was time she sat with the consequences. But I didn't want to just beat her in court. I wanted her to feel the absence, to see the life she could have had, the legacy we could have built, and understand that she'd torched it for a fling with a man who vanished the moment things got complicated. So I sent her one thing, one envelope. No note, no threats. Inside, a screenshot of our company's latest press release. New headquarters, new funding, a joint venture with one of the firms that had previously pulled out of her agency. The photo showed me and Emily standing in front of our new office space. Calm, professional, unbothered. That was it. I don't know if she screamed, cried, threw something, or just sat there in silence. And I don't care, because that was the end. No big showdown. No last-minute apology. Just a clean severing of ties, legally, financially, personally. The final blow wasn't noise. It was silence. The silence of a locked door. A phone that doesn't ring. An inbox that never replies. And that silence echoed louder than anything else. Owen, for his part, had already disappeared. Rumor had it he was working some remote gig for a logistics company in Ohio. No more suits. No more startup nonsense. Just spreadsheets, shipments, and a manager who didn't know or care about his past. Sabrina had no allies left. No clients. No audience. She was radioactive. And I didn't feel triumphant. I felt finished. Not in a bitter way. In a clean way. Like setting down a heavy bag you didn't realize you'd been carrying for years. The people around me, my team, Emily, even my accountant, kept waiting for me to celebrate. To pop champagne. To post some cryptic victory quote on social media. But that's not how real victories feel. They're not loud. They're not cinematic. They're quiet. You open your laptop and nothing crashes. You walk into your office and everyone trusts you. You go to bed knowing no one's scheming against you in the next room. You breathe. And you start building. That was my revenge. Not fire. Not fury. Just clarity. And distance. Two things Sabrina will never find again.